Hello and welcome to another episode of the Moped Outlaws. Today's guest, Melissa Rodway, is
polite.
Yeah, there is that politeness to us, but she's actually, there's some thoughts and things that are a little bit, I got a little triggered while we were talking to her.
Did you really?
Not too badly, but I think she has an interesting point of view about life, and she's out there seizing the day for herself. And I think that's a great thing for people to see and to learn about her life and the way that she's just out there creating adventure for herself as often as she can. And what I found interesting is that there were some practical limitations about what she could do in terms of travel and things that she wants to do. But you can just feel her fire to see more, and she really wants to do more. And I think it's a great inspiration as we go into the summer for people to, connect with, because go out there and find some interesting things. But start with this podcast. You're going to learn a lot.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Zeker wegen dem.
Yo je iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Marc.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Moped Outlaws. Our guest today is Melissa Rodway, the creator of Fly, a storytelling platform for the modern adventurer. From a childhood spent in a camper van across the Australian bush to paragliding in Nepal and trekking the Alps, Melissa has spent her life chasing the feeling of the unknown. A self-described Canadiana girl who's most present when she's away, Melissa founded Fly to move beyond basic itineraries and dive into the transformative power of the journey. Whether she's navigating Central America on a chicken bus or exploring her own backyard in Ontario, she is a firm believer that adventure is everywhere if you're curious enough to look. Please welcome the explorer, storyteller, and community builder, Melissa Rodway. It's great to have you.
Thank you. That's an awesome introduction. I appreciate it. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So I want to start in a very strange place. Tell me about your bamboo underwear.
Oh, that's from years ago. That's not that exciting, actually. I went to an adventure travel show here in Toronto, and there were these two amazing young guys from Victoria, Canada, which is Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And they are making this amazing underwear called Flight underwear. So I recommend it to everybody. It's made of bamboo, and it has a zippered pocket in it that fits your passport and anything else that you don't want people to find. I have a severe passport phobia, and it's never left. So when I'm traveling, I'm constantly touching wherever my passport is, buried under layers or whatever. And for some reason, I think that people will get it. And it's never happened. But this underwear actually really put me at ease. So so that's the story there. It just came from a connection at a trade show.
That's awesome. Thanks for coming on the show. It's really interesting today because Greg and I are normally closer. And so to have a person who's devoted to travel at a time when Greg is traveling himself, I think that's an auspicious point of view. I also noticed as I was doing research for the podcast that it's been a little bit of time since you really were deeply active on the blog, on your website, and those sorts of things. Sounds like you're mostly devoted to the podcast. Will you tell us a little bit about your podcast and some of the things you love about it?
So that's actually not where I'm at the moment. I haven't done the podcast for almost 3 years. The podcast started as a radio show. So I went traveling in 2010 for several months. And that's the book that I wrote that came out last year. So I went traveling in 2010 for about 4 months through Southeast Asia, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and China. When I came back from that trip, I had zero money. So I was not going anywhere. I had no job. I was putting my life back together. And I would say, I guess I always wanted to have a career in radio, but I just sort of went left all the time, or right when I should have gone left, and left when I should have gone right. And when I came back from that trip, I met somebody who had a radio show at a community radio station at one of the universities in Toronto. And I had said, oh, I always wanted to do that. I should have gone to school for that. And they said, you don't need to go to school for that. You just find a community radio station. They'll teach you, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, that's what I did. And I ended up creating Fly Travel Radio, which was a radio show on community radio at the University of Toronto. And I did that for about 5 years. And that was my way of traveling without traveling, because I just didn't have the means. And it was amazing. So I met all of these people around the world who were very adventurous, doing off the beaten path things. So I would have, a guest who had walked across Africa for 2.5 years, or another guy rode his bike from China to Canada. Also, that took 2 years. So it was people like that, stories like that. And within that, I was able to build a really incredible community of people, and just to learn about all these different things that you could do in the world. I mean, some of these are extreme adventures. Not everyone is going to do the things we just talked about. So there's a happy medium there. And I'm not as extreme as those people either. But it was a really good way. And it was another adventure in itself, to learn about broadcasting, being on the air, connecting with people around the world. And then I had to put it on pause. I went traveling again for long-term travel in 2023. So that's when I had to put it on pause. And when I came home from that trip, I ended up writing a book, and that came out last year. So you just can't do it all is the message here that I'm sending to you. And something had to go. And sadly, it was the radio show that morphed into a podcast in the last year or two of its existence.
And the book you're talking about is called The People You Meet, right? It's a travel memoir.
Yeah, it's from the time that I took off in 2010. So I basically had a partner who I'd met through travel. He was from England. I'm from Canada. We met on a cycling trip in Cuba. And since the day that we met, we had always said, oh, one day we're going to go travel around Southeast Asia. I mean, this was like literally 4 days after we'd met each other. And after a couple of years of traveling back and forth and a long distance relationship, we finally did it. So in 2010, we set off on this multi-month adventure. So he worked in luxury travel but was a backpacker at heart and had done a lot of stuff. And together we'd done quite a bit. So the purpose was that he was going on this trip to make connections for his future business. And that was, it was 90% adventure and like hostels and guest houses and true backpacking, and then 10% luxury. So maybe one night a week, we'd have a luxury hotel for free. So he was on a mission to like make all these connections, and I was just there as a plus one, which sounds great. But after a few weeks, I got a little bit restless. So I started writing these stories in my head about the people we were meeting, the places we were going, how I was feeling. I'm a very honest, transparent person. So once a week I would go and find an internet cafe or a hotel with a computer in it. I mean, this is 2010. We weren't glued to phones. They didn't really even exist as we know it now. And then those emails just took on a life of their own. And then 15 years later, I re-edited them and turned them into a book that came out last year.
So it's really centered upon people and relationships and how you viewed them.
It's centered on everything. I mean, in some ways, the title is a little bit misleading, yes and no, but it's about where I was at in my life. I was 35. I wasn't ever wanting to have kids. I had struggled in my career. I'm extremely honest about that. It's about the good, the bad, the ugly of travel. Sometimes you love it. Sometimes you hate it. I'm never one to say that it's amazing all the time, because it isn't. The joys, the pitfalls, the questioning of my relationship at that time. It's very funny. It's very raw. It's very honest, but it will also give you a very good itinerary for that part of the world. And I talk about, adventures that we've had, and some of them you'll want to do, and many of them you'll be thankful that I did it for you. So yeah, it's a mishmash of everything. There's something in there for everybody, and it's quite entertaining. I will say it'll give you a good laugh.
So am I hearing that your restlessness in this adventure with this long distance partner was also a restlessness within the relationship that started coming out?
Oh, I'm a serial restlessness person. That's in the book. So it doesn't really matter who I'm with. I have a restlessness that I think is innate within me. And I talk about that in the story as well. So we had traveled together for 4 years before this. So 2 years long distance, 2 years he lived in Canada. I'm a pretty independent spirit. So that's in the story, just about, when someone moves to your country, it's very, very challenging when you already have a full life there with your friends, your family, your hobbies, all of it. And then somebody you met on a trip, and you had this amazing long distance relationship for 2 years, which is my preference, to be honest, to like just meet up with someone around the world. It's pretty awesome. And then you go on with your life. But when you have this person that comes into your world, like how you navigate all of that. And so, yeah, I talk about all of this in the story. There's a restlessness within me that is in every part of my life. The only time it doesn't feel like that is, I think, when you're on an adventure, for me anyway.
So do you feel that there's an underside to that restless nature, something that you are losing out on or giving up to continue?
Yeah, I think that some of us are struggling, when you have an adventurous spirit. I think the thing about traveling that appeals to people who do it frequently is that when you are on the road, although it can be really tiring, there's something about the feeling of being more alive than you are in regular life, for me. And I think it's because we are so in the moment. When you're traveling, you don't have the option to not be in the moment. You have to make a lot of decisions. You have to keep your wits about you. You're also trying to just enjoy it and be free, and to see who's coming along the way into your orbit, and what adventures are there, and just how you even feel, how you react to things.
And I'm wondering, have you ever had the thought or impetus to bring that energy into your day-to-day life?
Oh, of course. And we all come back with that feeling when we come back home. But I think it only lasts so long. And trust me, I live a very interesting life in my day-to-day life too, and adventure is not just about getting on a plane. Adventure is learning how to do a podcast, or taking a journalism, path. I did a stand-up comedy course. I've sung in a million choirs. I cross-country ski. I've done winter camping. Like, I have a very full list of things that I will tackle and do and explore and experience. I think if you're an adventurous person on the road, you're an adventurous person at home too. It's just sometimes figuring out, where you're supposed to be at certain parts of your life. I had a mom who was very sick with Alzheimer's for 7 to 10 years. That can change the ability to just take off and be out in the world and be carefree. I mean, this is a part of being a human being, that life happens to you, and you have to make decisions as to what kind of life you're going to lead for a while. Is it going to be a more traditional, normal life? Is it going to be a life on the road? Sometimes you can marry the two, and sometimes you just can't. So it's just finding adventures wherever you can find them, be them at home, be them away.
Wow. I'm assuming then that the battle with Alzheimer's that your mom fought is now over.
Yes, my mom died in 2020, like days before the world shut down for COVID. And interestingly enough, I was in Jordan at the time, and I was in the Wadi Rum desert. And I was very drawn to a specific geography or scenery in that desert. So I was with a group of people. We'd had a really cool day of like riding around in Jeeps and climbing up and down sand dunes and this, that, the other. There was like a fire, like they made a fire on the beach, and we had tea, and the food there is unbelievable if you've ever been. And then it was around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun was, you know, where it should be for that time of day. It might have even been a bit later. And there was this angle that I kept looking at of like the mountains and the sand dunes in the background. And I couldn't stop looking at it. I was with like 5 or 6 people, and some of them were talking or whatever, and I just could not go to them. I had to like just keep looking at this particular landscape. And I felt like my mom was saying, it's time, and it's okay, and I'm going to go. And it just was very, very powerful for me. And then the next day I was back into Amman, into the city. And I was actually leaving like the next day or the day after. And I kept getting all these messages from home. And we are not a family that does that. We have been going away since we were quite young. And we never phoned home. This was maybe, back in the day of like airmail letters at some times in our lives. And we just weren't that family, right? Nobody heard from you until you got home. And so all of a sudden I had all these text messages, and no one was saying anything, but people were like, when are you coming home? And I was like, okay, yep. And then I got home. I made it to see my mom, and she died like within an hour of me being there. Wow. So yeah, so all these things are very interesting, and how I feel like sometimes you're in places where, like I felt the desert that day, Wadi Rum was sending me a massive message through my mom, through the world, through the universe. And I know that sounds super woo-woo, but that's how it felt. And that's how it was. And I mean, my mom probably should have died days before I got there. She was in a really rough state. And literally it was within, under an hour by the time I made it to see her, it was over. So, these are like weird and wonderful things that happen to you in the world, and when you're open to it, the messages are there.
You mentioned the idea of woo-ness, and as a seasoned traveler, you've probably seen a lot of different ways that cultures and people engage with the idea of spirituality. What kinds of things resonate with you as far as that?
Well, I don't delve too deeply. I think the thing about being a visitor in people's countries is that there's something to learn from every place that you go, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's just, the sex industry. That's a really interesting one if we want to talk about culture. So when we spent these 4 months, I was there for 4 months. My partner was there for 9 on this trip that I'm talking about. And cultural beliefs are really, really interesting because when we were traveling in those countries, people kept saying to us, these are people who believe in karma. And that was really comforting to me because it's pretty safe. These are pretty safe countries because they believe if they do anything to hurt you, it's going to impact them in the afterlife. So that's sort of how they rule things. And as a woman, that's a really wonderful place to be when you're in cultures and countries like that. And we did only see one terrible thing that had happened. A woman that we'd met had been assaulted on a bike and hurt and put in the hospital. But the person that did it, this was in Thailand or Cambodia, and I think it was Thailand actually, he was going to prison for a very long time for something that in our worlds would be like, there would be certainly some interaction there between the law and, rules and whatever had happened, but you wouldn't be put into jail for years and years and for life possibly. So that was really shocking to me that it was like, it's this severe, but it also made me feel really good and safe. However, so there's that. So there's a part of you that's like, isn't this beautiful that this is how these people are living their lives and everyone feels much safer and there's all of this happening. However, then we're inundated with the sex industry in those countries, certainly in Thailand, maybe less in Cambodia, Vietnam, definitely. It's massive. And it's very hard when you come as a woman, especially when you're coming from, North America, to witness what you see there. And some of it is for fun, it's tourism, whatever. But when I say fun, it's like, this is something that's been going on for, as we know, like forever in these parts of the world and in all parts of the world. But when you're seeing like little children, little boys, little girls, you're seeing families actually like sending people off into the night with men. It's very challenging. It was very, very challenging for me. And it's very difficult to not infuse your Western beliefs on what this should look like and how it impacts your own sense of, what's right and wrong. And so I struggled with that. We would be out on the street. People would come after my partner, and it was very obvious that we were together. Like in some places, it is nonstop, and it gets really tiring. But then I talked to a few locals about it, and they really changed my view for that part of the world. And they just said, you know what, we don't see it how you see it. We don't view sex the way that you guys do. It's not like it is in the movies for us. It is a transaction. And for many of us, this money sustains us for a very long time. Like some of these, we have repeat clients sometimes who sustain us for many months of a year or a full year. They come back repeatedly. They're good to us. They look out for us, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's always the case, but it exists. And that was a real lesson to me, to just realize that, different cultures it's not all the same. We don't see everything the same way, and that you have to appreciate and respect a different viewpoint on something that you've grown up to believe is very black and white. So I think it's more things like that. I think universally we're very similar, all of us around the world. I think that's the beauty of traveling. I think we all walk away realizing and remembering and having it being drilled into our heads again and again, that no matter where you go in the world, it might look a little bit different as to how people live their lives, but at the core, everyone is the same. They're all looking to be safe, to be happy, to be under a roof, to be eating, to have some community around them. I mean, that's the biggest lesson. And so I think all these different cultural things that you pick up or you learn or you see along the way are really, really interesting to understanding, how different people function, but also to think about how we've also been brought up to think and what to believe is right and wrong. And that maybe, you have to just bend a little bit on that sometimes. It's very interesting.
My original question was more about what is the spiritual orientation that you have as a result of your travels. Do you have one?
No. I'm not religious. I am just like, whatever. You present to me, I'll learn, I'll listen. But no, I'm not a religious person. I am not at all.
Got it. Do you think women need more encouragement to seek out travel adventures?
Sorry, there was an overlap here. What was the question?
Do you think women in particular need more encouragement to seek out travel adventures?
I don't, because when you go out there, you're going to find that more than half of the people out there are women. I would say that there's more women with more adventurous spirit than men. I'm not trying to be rude here, but that's how it is. And I've been reading articles about that too, that actually the travel community, travel businesses are gearing more and more things towards women because it's women that are buying travel. So when I was traveling in 2023, I took a year off from work and I went on many, many trips. And I would say most people out there are women, often on their own. I think women are actually much more adventurous than men in many, many ways. And a lot of the women that I met had men at home, husbands, boyfriends at home that weren't interested. They didn't want to do it. And so they're like, well, I'm going to do it anyway, which is awesome. So I don't think that they need encouragement. I think they're already out there doing it. It's just that they don't get the attention. I have on my show interviewed lots of women who are doing incredible things, but it's often men that still are on the posters and are, oh, aren't you wonderful? But there's women who are doing incredible things out there. I traveled with a woman who was in her 70s through Asia. She had traveled alone through India, through China, and these are hard countries. This is hard to travel with a person, let alone by yourself. There's tons of women out there. I think the women who are afraid maybe should realize that there's never been a safer time. There's a million apps out there. There's a million different meetups you can have. I mean, I was in Mexico for a few weeks on my own a couple of years ago. You can sign up for walking tours, art tours, beer and taco nights, painting nights. Like, there's so many things you can do now that are safe, where you're going to meet other people. They're going to make sure you get back to where you need to be. It's never been an easier or safer time, I think, for women.
Do you think that one's train of thought, in other words, let's take Mexico, for instance. If an individual goes to Mexico with a narrative that it is trouble and dangerous, they almost are inviting that into their environment.
Yeah, Mexico gets such a bad rap. I mean, I that really bothers me about Mexico. Canadians also talk badly about Mexico sometimes too because of the media. And sure, I mean, but I lived in an area of Toronto that was terrifying. So it's everywhere. It's in our own cities. And yes, I think if you have that narrative in your head, you're almost looking for it to prove that your narrative is correct.
Right.
And right. I think that's a real shame. And I think it's unfortunate. I mean, I did some backpacking in Mexico and it was so beautiful. The people were so lovely and so kind. I've been to Mexico many times because it's massive and there's lots to see and do there. It's never been a problem, but you have to have your wits about you. I mean, anywhere that you go, even in your own city, you have to have the eyes in the back of your head. So yeah, I do think we have to switch those narratives for sure.
Do you think traveling, well, let me ask you this, knowing yourself as a young girl, let's say before you were even a teenager, did you have this adventure bug in you? You were an independent young girl.
Well, I think when your family lives in Australia, when you're 6 or 7, it's sort of, we went in 1981. So there was no internet. When you left somewhere, you left, I think my parents maybe called home like once or twice in that year to their parents. It was very much a feeling of being gone from Canada. I mean, the world is different now. You can be connected all the time, no matter where you are, which is good and bad. But I think it taught me at a young age to see that there was life elsewhere. And my parents taught us that, exactly that. Like, there's life here. We lived in a small town in Ontario, Canada. We moved to an even smaller town in rural Australia. And we quickly created a whole new life there. We didn't want to go there. I'm the youngest of 3. We didn't want to go when they told us we were going. And then when we were supposed to come back, we didn't want to come back. So I think that it just really ignited something. But I think it's either in you or it's not. And maybe for some people, it comes later in life. A lot of people don't start traveling until they're in other decades or parts of their life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I think it was just there was always a curiosity and there's a love of adventure and doing new things and meeting new people. And it's exciting. There's an excitement every day when you're out there. And I think once you see that, you just want more of it. And that was always the case for me.
I'm curious, earlier in our conversation, you were talking about your 2010 adventuring. And you said when you got back home, you had to put your life back together. And I'm wondering, was that just a financial statement or was there an element of character in your inner life that was disrupted that you were bringing back together?
No, it was more, I had no money, I had no job, I had nothing. I mean, I can say that, whereas, in other parts of the world or a situation or other people's realities, having nothing means something totally different. So I'm going to say that from a privileged point of view. It was a very confusing time. So I had never been in love with any of my jobs at that time. My partner was still traveling because he was on a mission and he had like 4 or 5 more months to go, and I didn't have the money to keep traveling with him. So it was a lot of things, it was like, what do I do now? I need some income. And sadly, my mom got sick like probably a year after that. So I think sometimes, this goes back to my old woo-woo conversations, I think sometimes something's coming and you're preparing for it without knowing what it is. I have that experience quite often where I feel like I need to get ready because something's coming my way that needs my full attention. And I think I knew that, there was a new chapter being put out before me. But I think you ask anybody who quits their job and goes traveling for a while, the coming back part is not easy for anybody unless you just take off again, which is a nice thought.
Do you feel like right now, is there anything rumbling where there's a new chapter or a new thing coming in your life now?
Yeah, totally. Yes. And I knew it was coming. Again, I just have these feelings, but yes, I'm in the middle of a massive reorg with a job that I've had for a long time. And it's very stressful and very challenging, but I'm also very excited because I feel like it's my window to create a very different life. And the world as we know it is very different now with remote work and digital nomadism and all of those things. So, life is it's hard to be a person. Life is complicated. And sometimes when you're in it, the dots, you don't see how they connect. But when other things happen, then it starts to make sense. So I'm in sort of that realm at the moment, or it's like, okay, maybe I'm being led to this and a reorg is actually being done for me. The world is opening up a window.
All right. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a really lovely book title called Eat, Pray, Love. And I'm wondering if there's a word that you would add to that title.
Jump
and listen. I think we don't listen to ourselves enough. And I'm guilty of that as well. I think your body is always telling you things and our mind is trying to convince you otherwise. And it's that listening. And it's even for me, even writing my book or even writing, last week I did some big chunks of writing. I think you can apply this to so many parts of your life. So I'll get to my writing example. It's like sometimes I will go through the world and something's wrong. Like I'll feel really restless or agitated. And then I'll sit down and write. I'm writing a second book and I'll sit down for like 4 or 5 hours and write. And everything feels better again. And then I have to even tell myself, remember this feeling. Listen to how your body feels right now, because this is what you're meant to do. This is what feels right. And everything feels aligned. And sometimes I think we fight things. We're not listening to things. And I think we're not taught when we're very little to pay attention when the light goes on. I grew up loving drama class and singing in choirs and writing and doing all these things. But I did not realize that other people maybe weren't feeling that. I thought, we're all doing this. Isn't everybody's body like firing on all cylinders? And you realize later in life that no, that's not what's happening. And no one teaches you to if you feel the current, follow it and just see where it goes instead of I don't know, just sort of shutting things off or pretending that it's the same for everybody. I think that's a really important part of being a human being. And I think that doesn't change as you get older. I think as adults, we stay fundamentally the same. Of course, we change and we evolve and priorities are different, but we're still an 8-year-old person experimenting, leaning into things, looking for adventures, trying new things. And we should still be paying attention to that. And I think that for me, even recently, you can get stuck, right? Like in working and in like just like being on the treadmill and trying all these things. And for me lately, I've had to remind myself to lean into the things that really speak to me, because that's where it's going to lead you. That's what's going to make you happier. When you're happier, you're nicer to other people. All of these things, like it's so simple, but we don't always listen to it or pay attention to it. And we need reminders of this, but some people figure it out quite early, actually. But for me, it's been a constant, I have to remind myself.
Well, I think I've pondered this element, and I've thought about when I was a kid, let's say I'm on a bike and I fall off, break a wrist. I didn't get afraid of a bike. I would be back on the bike, probably with a cast on. And I was thinking, as we get older, these kicks to the head or these pains, we become fearful of them, and then we avoid what we think created that. We start closing our world in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It's quite sad, isn't it? But not everyone is built like that. Like I was in Italy last summer, a year ago, actually, almost a year ago, and I was hiking the Dolomites, and I was the youngest. I was 50 at the time. And some of the people on this trip were in their late 60s, early to mid 70s. And they were amazing, fit, super fit. Like they were coming off that mountain every day faster than I was, because I'm terrified of like the downhills, the uphills. I'm a bit of an Olympian, but the downhills, I'm terrified of like falling, spraining my ankles, my knees. I've done that a million times. And so I'm super afraid of that. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like you're still doing it, but there's an added element of fear that maybe I didn't have before. But then I'm looking at people that are almost 20 years older than me, and they were just like skipping down these things, So I just think it's really, really interesting how people, work their way through lives and what their attitudes are and their energies. And I don't know. I think that's one of the beautiful things about traveling is the people that cross your path are the best teachers. I traveled with a guy in Bolivia. He was like, I think 80. He was a retired physician. He was amazing. He was trying every drug anyone would offer him. He was drinking. He was like riding around in Jeeps with us and staying in crazy places that were not fun. It was not easy travel. So I think there's that too, where it's like, I think maybe we go through phases where we have been burned and we're afraid and we don't want to repeat things. And then I think there's the other side where you're like, what's the worst that can happen? It's probably already happened and I'll survive.
Right. Yeah. You reminded me of that Honest Nin quote about when the pain of staying a bud was more painful than the pain of blooming. So I had to bloom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting how pain plays that role in our lives. Like you were alluding to earlier, following the electricity or following the flow and not waiting for pain to be the impetus for the change. And does that seem like a through line in your life? Like you are actively seeking the next joyful experience as opposed to trying to get out from under a painful experience to find joy? Does that resonate with you?
I think both are true for me. I think that I'm innately a curious person. I don't really sit still very much, even in my quote unquote regular world. I probably have more going on than most people because, I have an innate curiosity, but I also recognize when, things don't feel great and that I have to fix it. I think there's a lot of people that just sit in that. Like I will complain a little bit about where I'm at currently in my working life. And a lot of people will say, but you work at a great place and you have a pension and you have benefits and you have all these things. And you'll say, yes, but I'm dying inside. And a lot of people don't understand that because they would rather, like, that's just to them. It's like, but there's nothing else, right? Like I have a really hard time with those conversations because people don't always get that inside you might be like losing years of your life doing something that's not a fit. Whereas to other people, they'd be like, well, every job is terrible and that's just the way it is. And it's like, but that shouldn't be the way that it is. We should want more for ourselves. We should want something different.
Yeah. That idea that having a safe job is securing one's future, I think is a mistake. It's not a real thing.
No. I think maybe it used to be for people a long time ago. And for some people, I mean, look, we're not all built the same. For some people, that is the dream. And I'm happy for those people. And it should be like that. But if you're not built like that, it's a prison. It's really a prison. Right. And I think also that these places are not looking after us the way that they may have in the past. I think it's a bit of false advertising. The world is very strange now and it's very different. And I often say to people with where I'm at right now, I just say, I think I have to create my own world, right? My own employment, my own everything. And I have to believe in what I have to offer. And the look on people's faces is often like, you're crazy. But I'm also like, but look what's happening in these companies. Isn't that crazy? And you're at their whim. And like, I'm in a place where it used to be a very collaborative environment and overnight it's a dictatorship. So what I'm supposed to just roll with that? Like, it's just very interesting what people are willing to sacrifice and put up with and, you know, and just not kind of maybe fight for what piece of the pie should be theirs. So I think we're at it's just a very weird world we're in, but a great world too. There's, I think, maybe more opportunities in some ways for us.
What I notice about people that have this predilection for safety versus people who are more adventure bonded, that sometimes there's a correlation to the way trauma occurred in their early family life. The story about getting taken to Australia and living in rural Australia sounds like, to me, a very safe, warm family environment that you then were sent together. You went out on this massive adventure. So your nervous system aligned with this idea of adventure is home.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate reflection of your early family life?
Yes. I mean, my parents separated like a year after we went to Australia. So my mom left, my dad raised us. My mom, we saw like twice a month. So there's a whole other story in that, in my life. But yes, I would say that you're not wrong in that it's quite possible that, you know, that was our last sort of core family memory of us doing this as a team, as a family. And after that, we had a very, very different life. And so when I do go on a trip or an adventure, it does feel very normal to me. It feels like home to me. It makes sense to me. There's something that I can breathe better. I just feel like that's more of my authentic self. And, you know, who knows, there could be a connection to that as well. But it's just very interesting. I went to Nepal with a friend of mine years ago, and we had been friends for a long time, and he also loved adventure and he's very fit. And I'm really now into active travel, hiking trips, cycling trips, things like that. And he's maybe not traveled as much as I have, but he's done quite a bit. And when we got home, his husband said to me, "How did you handle all of that stress?" And I went, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, oh. And so like my friend had gone home and been like, oh my God, that was stressful and terrifying and whatever. And I was just like, yeah, like, isn't it so interesting how people's nervous systems react so differently to situations that you're in? I find that really interesting.
It sounds like resilience was baked in at that phase. Like when you went to Australia, you learned the pleasure of resilience as opposed to the fear of resilience.
I mean, I think, we can all relate to this. This was like an era of, there was no helicopter parenting. My parents moved us to Australia and we had to walk through a bush path to get to a school that was in the middle of a rainforest. It was wild. This was a school where they would hit you with a ruler, like if you had smudges on your, printing sheets. Like it was intense, but we didn't question it. It's 1981. I can guess from like looking at my video screen, we all get this. You just went along with it. That was how it was. That was normal. So I think that we are a resilient generation. Anyone who's like 45 plus, 50 plus, because there was no option not to be. And I think the other thing is that for me, I always felt like nobody, even from being a young girl, even those days in Australia, no one's coming to get you. So you have to figure it out. You have to make friends. I cried a lot because I was super shy, but my parents weren't like, they were like, oh, well, here we are. So that's how it was back in that time. And I think that has served us very well in many ways, and probably in other ways it has caused major trauma. But I just think that, yeah, like resilience from a young age was a survival mechanism. And I had to have it on many levels, not just traveling. I mean, when your dad is raising you in a small town and you're a latchkey kid and you see your mom twice a month, that's baked in when you're, I was 8 years old when that happened. You do not have an option.
The Australian, go ahead, Greg.
Well, I was just going to say, it occurs to me because you said your siblings are like you. They're all over the world all the time and very adventurous. And it seems that being usurped from your home to the other side of the world, and then shortly after your parents split apart, would imbibe in one that element of I have a family and I'm on my own. I'm going to figure this out on my own.
Yeah, even to this day, like if I have a problem, I will maybe talk to people, but at the end, I'm like, I really know that it's on me to like figure it out. And I just think that's kind of how it goes, And I think also though, back to part of your question too, like when we were in Australia, we also went to Bali, and no one was going to Bali in 1981. I think we were the only tourists there the days that we were there. And I think that too, when you are young and you see like you can go to places and, I had very white blonde hair. So the locals were like touching me all the time on my head and giving us chocolate. And my sister was very tall. She was 12, and the men were all wanting to marry her and asking my mom when they could marry her and all of these things. So I think even then, when you're a little kid, and I'm a very observant person and I'm pretty intuitive, but you're watching all this and seeing it unfold and how adults negotiate this, that too builds a little bit of resilience in you to just be like, I remember being a little nervous a few times in some of these situations, but that it was okay in the end. And I think that also teaches you about people, that 90% of people are actually really good in the world. And I don't know, I think there's so much in all of that when you're just a little girl, 7 years old, like looking around at all these adults who are also trying to figure it out and navigate it. And as I got older, I'm like, they didn't have a clue what they were doing, obviously. Like, who does, but just there's so much in that of like observing and watching and learning resilience, and that everything's going to work out. And it's fascinating, really.
In Australia, a lot of the flora and fauna, things are trying to kill you. So what kinds of animal encounters have you had in your travels, and what are some of the stories of how you were a little frightened but you overcame it? Or tell us a little bit about that kind of part of your experience.
So in Australia, we had a lot of spiders in our house, like I think they were the huntsmen. They are not dangerous, but when you've come from Canada, where like a daddy long legs is the most terrifying thing in your house, I remember when we got to the house and turned on the lights, because the house in Australia had sat empty for about 2 weeks before we got there. There were these massive spiders that were like the size of my hand, furry, meaty, like all over the whole house. And that was like our first lesson, right? I remember we showed up there. It was nighttime. We rolled up in the dark, and this was our new home for a year, and it was loaded with these spiders. So my dad was very much like, we will not kill anything. And we learned very quickly the whole glass paper. They're going outside. So that was interesting. And then we did have a redback spider on our shed for a few days, and those will kill you. So I don't know why my dad waited as long as he did, but he did wait. Probably didn't know what to do either, but we did have one of those on our shed. We had chickens, like we bought 5 chickens, one for each of us, that like ran amok in our yard, and that was super fun. And then my mom one day saw a massive snake go through by our house, but she didn't tell us till we were back in Canada, because she didn't want us to be afraid. Yeah. So to be honest, other than that, that was it for us. We did spend a couple of weeks in the desert camping, and the dingoes were, we could hear them at night. But other than that, I don't remember anything. And since then, it's more like vehicles are the scary thing for me, like night buses that clearly are not safe, with like, being held by what feels like dental floss and one like nail. Those are the things that terrify me more than animals in my travels, I would say.
Okay, real quickly, with Marc's introduction, he said a chicken bus. What is a chicken bus?
So chicken buses are super popular, or the norm, in places like Guatemala, probably even Costa Rica, but Guatemala, Nicaragua, Central America. So basically they're these wild buses. They're local buses that they have people on them. They can have chickens on them. They can have anything on them. And they're just like transporting whatever needs to be transported from town to town, village to village. I remember being in Cambodia, and we took a small van. I think there were like 15 of us, and we were driving from one village to the next, and there were chickens on there, and like grains, like sacks of flour and grain and whatever, but chickens, motorcycle parts, everything and anything. So it's just like they load these things up with whatever they need to get to the next area.
It sounds like your radio show, podcasting, website, those are now 4-ish years in the past, it sounds like. And that means that there's something that's been going on, and I'm assuming it's your work that's sort of prevented you from being as active in that. What is that, right? And then what are you feeling like this thing that's going to open up is going to be about? What's the next thing likely to be?
So what's been going on is, when you write a book, it's impossible to do anything else. So I had a full-time job, and when I decided to put the book out, that was in 2024, and that consumed a full year of my life. So I stopped the podcast around 2022. I went traveling 2023. And then in 2024, I committed to the book. It took me a year to put it out. And then trying to sell the book is as much work as writing the book, to be honest. So that's a very good question that you're asking about what's next. I don't really know, but I feel like there's a marriage between a lot of these things, podcasting, interviewing, writing, storytelling. My background is actually in like operations, logistics, events, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like there's some sort of weird culmination in there, but I really don't know yet what it is, but I'm sure it will present itself to me at some point. But it's not easy, that, you know, and it's interesting because a lot of people will be like, oh, Melissa, you are good at so many things. You're smart. You know, it'll be fine. And it's like, thank you. But what is it exactly? Like, what exactly should I be doing? Because other people see it before you do, right? That's always how it goes.
People to know, the title of the book again is The People You Meet. And we will link to that in the show notes so that people can access that and buy the book if they want to buy the book.
They should buy the book.
Say, Greg?
You mentioned earlier that you had a tendency to swing right when you should have swung left and turn left when you should have turned right. I have a question with two halves. One, how does that show up really? And is that still evident in your life today?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm working on that. I think, you know why? It's because I like a challenge. So there's a part of me that's like, this is how I'm feeling about this. But what happens if I don't do it? What happens if I like abort that and I go totally off in a whole other direction? And that does not always serve you well. So it can and it cannot. I mean, there's two sides of that. But I am now at a point where I feel I have to lean into like listening to where the lights are going on. But I think I'm a risk taker as well. I do kind of like to play with, you know, I just kind of like to dance a little bit with the devil and be like, oh, well, I feel like this, but I'm going to go over here and try that. But
that's what I'm wondering, if it's coming a bit from that desire for independence, and in that is also rebellion. So
yes.
If the world is saying, go this way, your rebellion, independent self goes, oh yeah, F you, I'm going this way.
You got it, Greg. You got me figured out.
Well, that's because I live that myself.
Oh, okay. Well, do you have any like tips for me?
Here's what comes to mind in this whole conversation with the three of us that you've been talking a lot about is take a breath. It's a big world. Relax. We're all here. We're all trying to figure it out. That helps me with that rebellious, like cut off my nose to spite my face.
Yes. Okay. I will write that down and tattoo it to my forehead.
Well, yeah. Careful what you tattoo up there. It can get you into trouble.
That's true, isn't it?
I was going to say, whatever you do not ride any motorcycles.
Oh, wow. I have ridden on the backs of motorcycles. Why? Do you have a story in there?
No, I was literally trying to use reverse psychology on you.
Oh, I think my motorcycle days are done. That is one thing about getting older. It's like, yeah, I am a little bit more the things that I used to do. Even when I edited this book that just came out, I mean, I was 35 when I was traveling like that. And some things I'm like, oh my God, I would not do that now. Like, what was I doing? I'm so glad I was young and dumb. But yeah, there are some things that do change where you're like, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore.
In all your adventuring, you mentioned the gentleman you met in his 80s who was doing, whatever medicinal substances were passed his way. Have you had adventures with ayahuasca or other hallucinogenics?
I haven't yet.
Experiences?
I haven't yet, but it does come across my mind often. It's just, you know what? I don't want to be like throwing up and, all of that fun stuff. I'm terrified of the extrication. And, I mean, everyone that I meet says that it was life-changing, but that there are things that they saw that they maybe, I don't know if there's things I really want to see from my past, that part scares me a little bit. Have you done it?
I've done a lot of mushrooms and some LSD. I haven't done ayahuasca. So it does seem potentially a prime part of your life where you're at this place where change is happening
Mm-hmm.
there could be some insight light that
Yep.
opens up.
I have a different view if you're open to it, Melissa.
Yeah, let's hear.
Based on our conversation and the limited insight that represents to you from my point of view, the brain itself makes most of those chemicals already. And that if you look at high-level meditation practitioners and other sorts of embodied practices, you can access the brain's ability to open to the new possibilities without necessarily having to consume a substance. And for me, it seems like your lust for travel, your desire to open to the world's views that you haven't seen yet, is that in its nature form, in its natural form. And that isn't going to be necessary, I don't think, for you. The discovery, your root level desire to travel and see new things and be open is essentially very different from someone who's trying to fix themselves by going on an ayahuasca journey to understand what their limitations are. Doesn't resonate with me that you need it. You seem to be already there. So that's my opinion about it.
Well, I like your opinion because I don't want to throw up and have diarrhea. So I might go with you on that.
There's lots better psychedelics than ayahuasca if you just want to trip, right? You don't have to throw up and have all of that happen.
No, yeah,
right? There's a lot more fun ways to do that. But
that's true.
Yeah. So besides supporting your book, if someone was intrigued by this conversation, what would you encourage them to look at with regards to your life? Do you want them to go to your website? Is there something about relating to you that you want to invite more of?
So you're right about my website. I have not been very active on there. So Instagram really is the best place for me at the moment. I'm pretty transparent on there with pictures and my thoughts about anything that jumps into my brain. So yeah, Instagram, fly_travel_media.
Got it. So we'll also link that in the show notes so that people can find you there. And we'll probably invite you to be a collaborator on some of our own Instagram stuff as a result of the interview.
Absolutely.
This brings us to the point in our podcast, which Greg and I love. We ask everyone on the show a certain very specific question.
Okay.
And I'm going to let Greg ask it.
All right, so this is our final question, Melissa.
Okay.
Eminem or Foo Fighters?
What?
Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Okay.
That's the question.
M&M are Foo Fighters?
Yeah.
Or Foo Fighters, right?
I don't understand. So I guess I'm failing your question already.
There is no fail.
You can't fail this question.
All right.
That's why we love it. Is because every experience of asking this question is unique.
Yeah.
So don't feel weird. Don't feel bad.
Okay. I don't.
Would you like us to explain it, or should we just leave it as a mystery?
Nope. I want to know.
All right. So a gentleman named Marshall Mathers, his stage name is Eminem.
Oh, yes.
He is an incredibly gifted performer and lyricist and hip hop artist.
Yep, I know him.
And then there's another group that is led by a guy named Dave Grohl, who play rock and roll
Foo
music.
Fighters.
I know them. Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
so it's just that's the basis of the question. Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Oh, Eminem or Foo. I thought you said Eminem are Foo Fighters.
No.
Oh.
Or sorry.
No. Okay. Foo Fighters all the way. I love Dave Grohl, although I'm not thrilled with him for, having babies with other women, but that's okay. But yes, I love Foo Fighters. So yeah, there you go.
Would you be asking you a little bit about that last piece?
Yes, when you are like a product of divorce and interesting things that go on in your family, it's, you are left with that impression for the rest of your life about, it's just not cool. So yeah, it's just, get your shit together, really. Is my thought there.
Travel a little, Dave.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, that was the problem, I think.
yeah, exactly.
Well, Melissa, it's been a joy to have you on the show. And I am super curious what's going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months for you. And I would just like to say, we want to know. So hopefully you'll come back and tell us about what happens during this next chapter of your travels in life. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed that. It was really fun and a great conversation. So thanks for having me.
Recording stopped.